Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are cracking open one of the most baffling astronomical cold cases in history. We're going to look at an event that literally challenged our entire understanding of the universe. It was a transmission so totally unprecedented, it forced humanity to seriously stop and ask if someone or something was actually reaching out to us. The mystery of the WOW signal remains completely unresolved to this day, and it all boils down to one single mind-bending night back in 1977.
Okay, let's dive into this. 72 seconds. I mean, in the grand sweeping timeline of the cosmos, that's absolutely nothing, right? A total blink of an eye. But in 1977, that fleeting little window was all it took to capture a signal unlike anything we had ever recorded before or since. That wild contrast, just 72 seconds of data fueling a relentless 50-year scientific obsession, is exactly what makes this story so unbelievably captivating.
So, let's set the scene. It's August 15th, 1977. At Ohio State University, the Big Ear radio telescope is just quietly doing its job, scanning the skies. Now, its mission was actually pretty profound. Search the cosmos for any unusual radio signals that might be originating from intelligent life. But, for years leading up to this exact night, the Big Ear had just been listening to the standard background hum and static of the universe. It was finding absolutely nothing extraordinary. It was an ordinary summer evening, and the scientists on duty fully expected just more of the usual cosmic silence.
But then, that years-long streak of finding nothing at all changed in a literal instant. Out of nowhere, the Big Ear captured a narrow-band radio signal. Now, we really need to talk about why this specific type of transmission caused such a massive shockwave. Natural cosmic phenomena, like quasars or pulsars, generally broadcast radio waves over a super wide range of frequencies. But a narrowband signal? That focuses immense, incredible power into one tight, specific frequency. To a scientist, that implies intentional engineering. It is exactly the kind of hyper-focused broadcast an alien civilization would use to cut through the static and communicate across the massive emptiness of deep space. Suddenly, a signal had arrived that perfectly fit the profile for intentional contact.
Fast forward just a few days. Astronomer Jerry Aumann is meticulously reviewing the giant computer printouts generated by the telescope. As he's scanning these endless columns of characters representing the signal's intensity, one specific sequence jumps right off the page at him. 6EQUJ5. To really get why this was so startling, you have to understand how the Big Ear actually recorded its data. It used an alphanumeric scale to measure how strong the signal was. It started with numbers 1 through 9 for low intensities, and then switched to letters A through Z as the signal got exponentially stronger. Normal background space noise usually just hovered around a 1 or a 2. Hitting the letter U meant this signal was roughly 30 times louder than the normal deep space background. He was staring at an impossible, completely off-the-charts spike.
When Eamon saw this impossible spike in the data, he was completely astounded. I mean, wouldn't you be? He grabbed a red pen, drew a big circle around that exact sequence, 6EKUJ5, in bright red ink, and scribbled one single incredibly definitive word right in the margin: wow. And just like that, a spontaneous handwritten note of pure scientific astonishment gave this deeply mysterious transmission its famous name. The WOW signal was officially born.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it breaks down exactly why this anomaly was so bafflingly perfect. It ticked boxes that astronomers had only ever theorized about. First up, it appeared to originate right from the direction of the constellation Sagittarius, out near the dense center of our galaxy. Second, and this is a massive deal, it matched the exact frequency scientists expected an intelligent civilization to use. We're talking about the hydrogen line frequency, which is widely considered to be a universal mathematical standard for interstellar communication. Third, it followed every single expected rule of an artificial transmission. It behaved exactly like something intentionally engineered, not just randomly occurring in nature. And finally, the most frustrating characteristic of the whole shebang, it lasted exactly 72 seconds. That perfectly matches the time it took for the Earth's rotation to sweep the telescope's listening window past a fixed point in space, and then it vanished forever. Like a perfect puzzle piece that showed up just long enough to be seen.
Of course, once you find a signal that's seemingly perfect, the absolute immediate scientific response is to point the telescope right back and find it again. But man, that is exactly where the frustration begins. Days later, scientists initiated this urgent search of the exact same patch of sky. The result? Absolutely nothing. Weeks later, they listened again. Continued silence. Months go by. They keep trying. Still no returning signal. Decades pass by. humanity develops vastly more powerful telescopes, points them right back at that same spot in Sagittarius, and the transmission never returns. For nearly half a century now, that single isolated event has just stubbornly refused to replicate itself.
Because the signal never repeated, it ended up splitting the scientific community into two fiercely debated camps. We essentially have two primary suspects for what went down that night. On one side, some researchers firmly believe this was Earth's very first brief contact with an alien intelligence, a deliberate, incredibly powerful message shot across the stars. On the flip side, other experts argue for an exceptionally rare natural space phenomenon that just happened to perfectly, randomly mimic the exact signature of an artificial broadcast. It's honestly fascinating how a mere minute and change of data can fuel two completely opposite, totally unyielding viewpoints.
But here is where the whole investigation basically hits a brick wall. No single theory cleanly explains every single detail of the event. For instance, to back up the natural phenomenon argument, a few researchers proposed that passing comets might have created a temporary cloud of hydrogen gas that emitted the signal. But then, other astronomers completely shot that down, pointing out that comets simply wouldn't produce a signal anywhere near that concentrated and narrow. It feels like every time a natural explanation is offered, another part of the data contradicts it. At the exact same time, the alien transmission theory lacks the ultimate required proof in science: repeatability. Without a repeating signal to actually verify and study, the scientific community remains firmly stuck without a definitive answer.
So here we are, nearly 50 years later, and the WOW signal remains one of science's greatest, most tantalizing, unsolved mysteries. We're basically just left with the cold, hard facts. A perfectly tuned, artificial-looking transmission, exactly 72 seconds of data, and one handwritten word in red ink. When you step back and look at the evidence, the sheer perfection of the frequency, and the deafening decades of silence that followed, you really are forced to ask, were we ever truly alone? It's the kind of mystery that makes you look up at the night sky with a totally different kind of wonder, knowing that the ultimate truth of what happened in 1977 might still be out there, waiting for us among the stars. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.